Welcome back to Trucker Talk Radio. You're on Behind the Wheelhouse with Jay and Jay. I'm John. This is Justin. How you doing today, Justin?
Doing good, sir.
Well, good. Well, we've got a great guest today. Today's guest
Mhm.
is one of those rare people in trucking who has literally done it all. U.S. Coast Guard veteran, licensed CDL holder, professional driver, driver trainer, driver recruiter, safety supervisor, safety manager, over a 1,700 truck fleet, and since
Wow.
January 1st, 1998, the founder of one of the most recognized consulting and training organizations in transportation. The Kelly Anderson Group helps fleets find, recruit, retain, and train their drivers and staff across both truckload and final mile operations. And when he's not doing that, he's flying his Piper Saratoga,
Nice.
captaining a rescue boat on Table Rock Lake, rounding up cattle in Wyoming, sounds like a Dutton,
Hmm.
or riding a Polaris RZR somewhere most people can't even get to. Kelly Anderson is the real deal. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. So,
Sounds good.
your background reads like someone who's never said no to a challenge: Coast Guard, professional driving,
Yeah.
recruiting, safety, consulting, speaking. So, let's go to the beginning. Tell us how it all got started.
Man, um, I guess really I was in the Coast Guard, but see, in high school, I was a Pierce County deputy sheriff's cadet. And I
Okay.
wanted, so that wasn't even on the list. Was interested in
Sorry,
law
I missed
enforcement.
it.
Yeah. I wasn't old enough to be a deputy sheriff, so I joined the United States Coast Guard. And in the Coast Guard, you do everything. There's actually more
Uh-huh.
people in the New York City Police Department than the entire Coast Guard.
Oh,
And
wow.
Wow.
so I gained rank, turning wrenches as an engineer. And the
Mhm.
engineers in the Coast Guard do everything because you may only have one engineer on the boat and you've got to do everything. Plus be a crewman, plus be everything else. And so
Right.
that's why I did federal law enforcement and oil spill investigating and all that. Well, somewhere in the middle of all of the time in the Coast Guard, I decided, you know what? I don't want to be 65 years old sitting on the porch one day wondering, what if I drove truck? And so CFI out of Joplin, Missouri had mistakenly ran an ad in the Portland Oregonian newspaper the weekend I picked up the paper. And I called this recruiter and he's like, we don't recruit from there. And I'm like, well, you ran an ad here. And he says, well, we don't recruit from there. And I says, well, I'm going to be moving to Missouri. He says, well, if you go to Missouri, you need to go to truck driving school. I said, great. Where? He said, Crowder College. Well, I got out of the Coast Guard, went to Missouri, went through Crowder
Wow.
College. I was in my eighth week of class when I finally walked in because we was on days. So when we swapped to nights, I walked into his office one day. He had a heart attack. He thought, I told you you had to go to truck driving school. I said, yeah, I just went to nights. He was like, holy cow. And so I still can't believe I did that. So, drove and then became a driver finisher. And then
Wait. What is a driver finisher for our
and
listeners who don't know?
but oh yeah, good job.
Yeah.
Well, the basically, when trucking companies hire somebody with no experience, then they put them with a trainer that's an over-the-road driver trainer. And
Okay.
so I would take students and finish them out, same as,
Yeah.
happened to me when I came out of school. And so did that for a few years. And it was actually my friendship with that recruiter that got me offered the job within CFI. And I would say it really all took off when I was a recruiter and Rick Crane of American Truck Driving School, and some of your drivers and people listening to that have been around for a while will remember American Truck Driving School. And Rick Crane said, Kelly, the next time you're in town, I want to loan you a set of tapes. And literally, it was cassette tape. And
I bet some of our listeners have never even used a cassette
I
tape.
about promise that. Yep.
that's right. I mean, I tell you what, Audible is the bomb, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry for this phone. Hopefully my staff will grab this so it will be ringing. So yeah, I started listening to the tapes and there were different tapes, In Search of Excellence and the Science of Personal Achievement, the Psychology of Success, See You at the Top, and the list goes on. And maybe as we're talking, there's some books I'd like to recommend to people that they listen to. And that's
Absolutely.
something I wish I had done as a driver. We have lots of time as professional drivers driving down the road looking at the windshield.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, if you spend too much time, listening to Fox News or something like that, or whatever your news source is, you're going to end up with a bad attitude and just
The
unhappy.
truth.
Absolutely.
And
It's amazing how that works, Even if I put on music instead of the news,
abs
I'm in a much better mood.
Absolutely. And I mean, I actually look forward to spending, windshield time. I've got to drive 1,900 miles here pretty quick, which is nothing, of course, to our staff or what I used to do, but I've got to run out to California and do some classes. And I'm looking forward to it because it gives me that time to listen to some of the books on tape that I have.
It's a great
And so what
idea.
I learned in
Mhm.
those listened, what I learned in those tapes as I was listening was number one about goal setting. And I'll go back to that in a second. Number two is about attitude. And then number three is studying in your field. A lot of people, when they talk about success or what they want, well, first off, you got to decide what you want. I mean, do you truly know what you're trying to accomplish? And so, and literally, think about us as drivers. And we're in name the place United States, and we're going somewhere else. And even if it's 1,900 miles away, we can tell you, I will be there at 3 o'clock on Thursday. And we show up at 3 o'clock on Thursday. Most people are like, how do you do that? Well, it's just called trip planning. We do it
Mhm.
all day, every day. Well, in us being there at 3 o'clock on Thursday is not left to chance. It's not left to catching a break or getting lucky. It's a foregone conclusion. Why is it a foregone conclusion? Because we know where we are. We know how the roads that we need to take to get there. We know when we're going to get fuel. We know when we're going to take our breaks. And we take the steps to get from here to here. The same is absolutely true in goal setting in all different aspects of your life, whether it's financial, in your relationships, in your spiritual life, in your career. Every single one of those, figure out where you are, figure out where you want to go, and make that a goal and figure out when you want to get there. Because when you finally say, I want to do it by this time, that's when you start taking the purposeful action to get there. Planning a time frame is your signal that you're serious about it. I mean, how many people do you know that's not only an instrument rated pilot, not only a CDL holder, a motorcycle rider, an avid extreme horseman, a U.S. Coast Guard licensed captain, a scuba diver? I mean, yeah, okay, the truth is, you're going to find out one day I was James Bond. I'm the guy they did the movie about. Kidding about
Hey, one
There
of
you go.
flesh.
There you
but,
go.
yeah, but I mean, for crying out loud, you name it, we can go do it. That didn't happen by accident. That happened about a guy going, you know what? I want to do this. So the same is true with career. I set a goal to be the president of CFI out of Joplin, Missouri. And every day I went to work was to be one day closer to being president. And that's why I got promoted from, recruiter to safety supervisor to safety manager, and then ultimately had all the responsibilities without the pay or title of director of safety the last year I was there. I realized that Herb Schmidt was going to be the next president, and he was too young. And so by the time he got through being president, would I be able to be?
So in 1994, you set a goal to start your own company. You planned a
That's
launch
right.
date, January 1st, 1998, and you hit it exactly, right?
I did. Absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, guys, I was like everybody else, and man, you've done your research. Good job. So I was like most people. I was living paycheck to paycheck in August of 1994. And this became a goal. And so I put it on paper. Well, which do I owe the least on? The pickup, and then the credit card, and then this other credit card, and then this other loan. And so basically I just started really focusing on getting debt free. I mean, for the first time in my life, I got debt free in mid 1997. and then started my company in January of 1998. And I've pretty well stayed debt-free ever since. Occasionally we'll end up financing something like you don't pay cash. I wasn't able to pay cash for the airplane, but so we had a loan on that for a little while till we got it paid off. But it just becomes goals, and people are like, "How do you accomplish the things you accomplish?" I figure out where I'm at, I figure out where I'm going, and I purposefully take the steps to get there. Nature abhors a vacuum. For people that say, well, one of these days, when I have time, you're never going to have time.
Nope.
But when like for instance, this phone call, guys, had we not put this on the calendar, I guarantee you I've got plenty to do. And I would not be sitting around looking for something to do. But you called me and says, hey, and I said, yeah, let's have a conversation. This is going to be fun. I put it on the calendar and we are sitting right here, right now, not by chance, but because of purposely taking the steps to be here.
My wife always says, speak it in, and put it on the calendar, and it will happen.
Absolutely. And just kind of continuing on. So goals, I hope that anybody listening to this really consider this. What do you want out of life? And what do you want to accomplish? The biggest limiter is your ability to dream. Guys, I was raised in a family. My dad was in the Air Force. He spoke 13 languages, by the way. It was in national security for 35 years, but he had to work 3 jobs to feed our family. There's no silver spoon here. And, my dad gave me a good name, and I'm going to pass it along at least as good as I got it. I don't have a college degree, but I teach at 3 colleges as a subject matter expert, because the stuff that you guys know and the stuff that the people driving down the road know, they don't teach that in college. And they need real instructors. And then you know what? They reach out to you. But you don't get there by just, rinsing and repeating and doing the same thing every day. First off, as I say, have goals. Secondly, have a positive attitude. When I do management and leadership coaching, one of the questions I ask employees, and I also ask managers, what attributes, do you look for in employees? Or what attributes do you look for in a boss? We'll typically list about 30 attributes. Of those 30 attributes, about 25 of those are attitude-based. Only about 5 are skill-based. Zig Ziglar says your attitude will determine your ultimate altitude in life. And that is absolutely true. I tell you, I have pessimistic people will say, well, you guys are just optimistic, I'm just realistic. Yeah, they're realistic. And
it's amazing what positivity can do, and especially in the workplace.
Amen. And it's
even
amazing.
if you say you're just dreaming, well, so what? It's going to happen. I'm going to speak positivity into my life today, and I'm going to make something good happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's not so much as what happens to you as how you react to it. Pessimistic people see a challenge as a roadblock that validates their opinion that it wasn't going to work anyway. Whereas I see a challenge as a challenge. We got to overcome it. And the truth is, the more challenges I have, the better. You know why? It gets the losers out. It gets the people that think, oh man, it was easier for you. Oh yeah, I'd be successful too if it was given to me. But you know what is never given to you? Most people, if they want to be successful, if you'll give it to them, if you'll maintain it, if you'll do the work, if you'll be there the extra hours. Another Zig Ziglar quote, success does not come without sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice?
Very well said there.
Amen. So have a positive attitude as well. Studying in your field. I listen to books if it has to do with communication, with leadership, with management. I listen to a lot of financial books. Man, I went to a financial conference recently, and this guy says, "Welcome to the Matrix. And basically, it was like, you guys have been living in the Matrix and you had no clue. Let me show you something. And it was amazing the things that I learned about the way the other people treat money and work with money. So, most people, like when they go to a car dealership, their question is, well, what's my payments going to be? Man alive, don't ever do that.
Mhm.
By the way, you might know I own a car dealership. That's one of my other businesses. So,
Jeez, what don't you do?
I was gonna say, yeah, exactly.
yeah. The one I'm most proud of, guys, and I do mean this humbly, is I'm actually an ordained elder in the Southern Baptist Church as well.
I
And my
saw
dad is
that.
on my ordination board. So, yeah,
Okay.
just in case I had anything else to do, I thought I'd throw that on the plate.
So Kelly Anderson Group, you have services built around finding, recruiting, retaining, and training drivers.
Yeah.
That's the whole life cycle of the driver relationship. And you've been doing this for 25 years professionally. Why has driver retention remained one of the biggest unsolved problems, unsolved
You
mysteries?
You bet. So back to Kelly Anderson Group real quick, then I'll answer your question about driver
Sure.
retention. The first division I started of Kelly Anderson Group was seminars, driver recruiter training, driver retention training, management and leadership training and coaching. And that's why I bought the airplane, because I was just traveling 2 to 4 days every week somewhere. The next division we started was e-learning, Impact e-learning, a division of Kelly Anderson Group, and it's online driver safety training. We're one of the ELD training, federally authorized ELD training providers in the country. Plus, we have hundreds of thousands of drivers, both in the truckload and final mile space, that utilize our system for their monthly, safety training. And if we get a chance, we'll go back and talk about that and the importance of it. Then we also have a recruiting division where for some companies we are the recruiting department, and for others we just augment as they need help getting caught up. But back to your question about driver retention, one of the biggest challenges we have, and it is sad to say, but it's the way that the drivers are treated. I have a saying: don't label people. It allows you to treat them poorly without remorse. And guys, I do a
Well,
thing
well
called
said.
the yeah, I do a thing called the Undercover Trucker. Whereas, because I still have my full-blown CDL with all my endorsements, companies hire me to apply as a truck driver, show up and go through all of orientation as a truck driver. Then we blow the cover right before I drive out the parking lot with their truck.
I like
And
that.
yeah, yeah, and one of the things that I've put in place, or let me go at this another level. I mean, I'm sure I don't have to tell anything to your listeners. They know how they got treated in orientation. They were picked up maybe in a dirty old van at the hotel early in the morning and taken over to the company into a room with half broken down chairs that you're supposed to sit in for multiple days at a time. I mean, drug test, physical, road test, and then endless conversations about, if you do this, you'll get in trouble. If you do that, we'll fine you. If you do this, you'll get fired. How about we start telling people how to be successful at our company instead of how to get fired? And how about we start treating drivers? How do companies treat a new safety director they're going to hire? How do they treat a vice president? How do they treat an office staff person? Why don't
Much
we?
differently from the drivers.
Yep.
Amen.
Justin and I talk about it
That,
all the time.
All the time. Yep. It's amazing how I always say I've come from the recruiting side of the industry. Your recruiters and your onboarders are your first point of contact to a driver, and you can ruin that relationship before they ever get across the finish line to jump in the truck, a driver or a company driver or an owner operator. And I've said that to so many companies, like, you're ruining it. So when they get to that dispatcher, they're already got a bad taste in their mouth, and it doesn't take a lot to push that driver over the edge after starting, that they just walk away. And I think that's got a lot to do with the retention. I do have a question for you. I got two actually. So I want to know what really separates companies that retain drivers versus the one that don't. But my main question, and John will get a kick out of this: We got to know your secret about your hair. You've spent way too long in trucking not to be in the club that we are, because we've been in a long time. We've lost all our hair. So,
Yeah, you're not in the BMC. Hey,
uh,
we can get a razor
yeah, we
and
have to get you to
Well,
join
fly
because.
out to you.
the truth is, I just don't have a good enough looking head, you know? We've all heard that. So, yeah, the Lord blessed me with, one
Yeah.
thing, I hardly ever wear a ball cap. I notice that all my buddies that wear ball caps all the time
Mm.
have hair problems. I don't know if there's
Yeah,
a connection there.
Yeah.
I think you're
Yeah.
right because
Yep.
I mean in high school,
Me too.
really started in middle school all the way through college. I wore ball cap every single day. Now I do have family that's pretty bald, bald at an early age, but I lost
Okay.
it at 21.
Wow.
I was losing hair at 15, so it was in my genetics, but still, I still blame it on trucking any way I look at it.
There you go. I think about like Stewart Transport out in Phoenix. What a great group of people. And something that my clients do, and they're one of them, Valley Transportation's another one that comes into mind up in Minnesota. And, one thing that we've talked about with fleets is first off, the fleet manager call the driver the Thursday before orientation to introduce themselves.
Mm.
Hey, because what's one of the very first questions that drivers have when they're going to come to orientation, and that is, who's my fleet manager? Where's my truck? And when do I get out of here?
Yep.
And so before they even show up to orientation on the Thursday before, hey John, I'm Kelly. I'm gonna, Joe says I'm going to be your fleet manager, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. Man, tell me a little about yourself, where you've been working, what you've been doing. They start building that relationship because people get committed to people, not to companies. So
Mhm.
start building that relationship with the driver before they even show up to orientation. And so there's a conversation there that I'm going to tell John, the driver, hey, listen, so on Monday, be in the foyer there at 7:30. I'm going to be standing there. I'll be wearing, a purple shirt. And so I'll be standing there and I'll be looking for you. And I want to give you a tour, buy you a cup of coffee before I hand you off to orientation. So literally, I'm meeting him just like I would a new office employee, just like I would with a new director or vice president. I'm meeting them, I'm showing them around, I'm giving them a tour, I'm
They
giving
feel
them,
appreciated, they feel wanted.
Yep.
and they're getting committed to me. What's in that for me? Now I've got a driver, instead of fighting me and wanting to cuss me and let me down, is going to, I'm starting to build that relationship where I've got one more person that walks through fire for me.
That's
And
right.
that's the thing I'd say to fleet managers is, look at the drivers that will walk through fire for you and look at the ones that set you on fire. And when you really think about it, over here you've got relationships. You know that person. Over here you don't know anything. Figure out how to replicate that. Figure out how to make that purposeful instead of an accident. Because as I talk to fleet managers, they're like, yeah, I tell you, the reason that these guys walk through fire for me is this happened and I met them. Well, how
Hmm.
about we turn it into meeting them on purpose? The other reason I think that we have a lot of turnover is most fleet managers are nothing but glorified dispatchers. And if I'm kicking them in the shin, and they need to be kicked in the shin, then take it. I mean, if the shoe fits, put it on. Somebody says to me, "Oh yeah, I want to be a manager." Cool. Don't tell me just about your experience. Tell me about your education. And I'm not talking about college. I'm talking about tell me about some of the best books that you've ever listened to or read about management and leadership. How about First Break All the Rules, written by the Gallup organization, interviewing hundreds of thousands of the best owners and managers in the world over 25 years? I want to tell you, the first time I listened to that book, I went, huh? I mean, literally, there was principles in that book I didn't think made sense. Listened to it again and went, hmm. Last time I went, oh, wow. Then I listened to it twice more after that. There's a book out there called It's Your Ship. And literally, I feel like people would think I plagiarized that whole book in my management leadership course. I did not. I will tell you, it's about a Navy ship, and I'll tell you another secret. Most of those earth-shattering and world-changing principles that he put into place on his Navy ship that changed and turned the worst ship in the Navy into the best ship in the Navy were actually standard operating procedure in the Coast Guard. FYI. I was like, it took me a couple of times to listen to it, and I went, wait a minute, we did that every day. That's just the way it was.
You're obviously well read, and you become one of the most requested speakers in the transportation industry. Conferences, running seminars, doing webcasts. When people ask where you learn your presentation skills, you tell them the third row. You mentioned it earlier, the third row of Bowie Street Baptist Church in
Yeah.
San Angelo. But the content, the leadership and management content, where did that come from? And how has it evolved over the 25 years of doing this work?
Yeah, so yeah, it's the third row of Bowie Street Baptist Church, San Angelo, Texas. I always tell people that, and I did go to Dale Carnegie, but it wasn't to learn how to professionally speak, although that's where a lot of people do learn to speak. For me, it was about relationship skills, and in a book that everybody ought to listen to. I don't care what your age is, and my kids have listened to it. My kids literally, and my son is 18 now, my daughter's 21, but even when they were younger, they would say, "Oh, that guy needs to listen to How to Win Friends and Influence People" by Dale Carnegie. That is all about relationship and communication skills. I literally, right before this phone call, the gentleman walked in, and we were talking about a situation, and I mean, I didn't get to say more than 3 words of a sentence, and then he'd interrupt me, and then 3 more words, and he'd interrupt me. I finally decided I'm not going to talk at all. I guess I don't need to, because whatever he has to say is way more important than what I have to say, obviously, because he's interrupting me. And so let him lead with the knowledge he came in with, and although he had questions, but
Right.
didn't give us a chance to answer them. So how to influence people. As far as management and leadership, I will tell you, people are still people. And so, do we have some really cool stuff we can do with AI now and those things? Absolutely. But in the end, it's still about communicating well with people. It's still about managers picking the right person and then putting the right person in the right job. Not only just adding, when I say pick the right person, well, the right person not only has experience, but they have talent. So many times people, all they look for is, do you have the experience and the safety record? But truly, I want to know, do you have a positive attitude? Do you have the experience, and do you have talent? Many people can play golf. Tiger Wood has talent, so I want to take it to that next level. As a lot of people are experienced truck drivers, but you'll thin that herd pretty quick when you start looking at their safety record, when you look at their fuel economy, when you look at them backing up in a parking lot and they can't, when you look at them climbing curbs, when they make right-hand turns. Hey, they got experience, but I'm gonna tell you, they suck with talent. They don't understand,
Mhm.
proper setups. They don't understand proper lane placement. They don't understand the references. Here's a little bullet for every professional driver out there. Let's say you want to make a right-hand turn. You're sitting straight in your lane and you've got a curb. Let's just say it's 4 to 6 foot off the side of your truck. If you'll notice, when you're sitting straight in your lane and you're wanting to turn right on this street that's coming up here, well, you got a couple of things to ask yourself. First off, is there enough room on that street to turn right, to do a pivot turn or a button hook? Well, of course, we'd like to do a pivot turn instead of a button hook because you violate fewer lanes. So we need to know at a glance, do I have enough room up there? Well, how do you know if you have enough room? You look at the lanes that are there. And what I find is with most regular old tractor, 53-foot trailer, tandem slid up where the rear mud flaps are below the door hooks, you need to have 2 full shoulders, 2 full lanes, and at least half of a turn lane. So at a glance, if you have a turn lane, 2 full lanes, and 2 shoulders, you can do a pivot turn. So maybe it's different with your truck. Wouldn't get, you can figure that out. This will just dial you in. And so when you look in your right-hand mirror, in the convex mirror, the curve is at the very bottom, 6 o'clock position. As you pull straight into that intersection and just keep going straight, that curve will move to the 3 o'clock position in your mirror. In that convex mirror, when it gets to 3 o'clock, turn hard right and your trailer won't climb that curb. It'll be a perfect turn.
How many drivers do you think really know that? Because I would imagine they don't get taught that. I mean,
Nope.
that now they can learn from watching Trucker Talk Radio and listen to it. But I
Yeah.
mean, I like that point because I don't think a lot of schools go into any type of depth of just little things like that can make a huge difference and make your day better. Because then you're not worried about popping a tire or hitting something you shouldn't or running too far out in the lane. And that's one thing I wish people, just normal Americans, would understand about drivers. They've got a hard job. They get no respect, no extra room, no courtesy, anything on the road. So I think a lot of times it's on the drivers to make their happy place while driving is learning those little key things like that. So I appreciate you giving that because that is something that I would imagine most of the drivers have no clue about.
The way I learned it is I had a student that I was driver finishing way back, in my CFI days. I could not keep that guy off curbs. And I talked and I tried everything. And I finally called my old trainer, Mike Gelati, and said, Mike, I need a trick, man. And he's the one that told it to me. And I've been passing it along ever since.
I may need to use that. I damaged the rims on my car all the time. I had to get the rim insurance because I'm always hitting curbs.
Yeah, I recently had a 45-foot motorhome and a 24-foot enclosed car trailer, and I'm just going to tell you, you don't want to put any. I sold it recently too, but you don't want to drag that baby on a curb. There ain't nothing cheap about
Well, I
that.
blame it on my kids. They're like, "Why are you in the shop again?" And I just like, "Oh my, I let my kid drive my car
There
again."
you go.
Yeah, that's the difference between experience and talent.
Mhm.
And the benefit of teaching that type of technique is, yeah, I can take somebody with very little experience and teach them how to drive that truck and make proper turns. And so, that's part of what I go around the country also doing driver finisher training where companies hire me to train their trainers. And those are the things that I show them. And so, back to turnover, and I don't know how much time we have here. I'm having a great time this with you
Yeah,
guys.
No,
we
no,
we
go
love
ahead.
listening to you.
Mhm.
Back to why do we have so much turnover in the industry, and back to orientation for a second. I've got to tell you I'll maybe tell you a couple of my undercover trucker stories. So here I am, like even last week, I did the opening keynote at a conference and then facilitated two of the breakout sessions or panel discussions that they had. But, on another day, here I am sitting in orientation, as a truck driver and getting treated like an idiot. By the way, I'm also a court certified expert witness. And so, when it comes to DOT,
You got to get him a T-shirt with a list of everything he does so we can keep everybody keep up with it. That's
it's
amazing.
A friend of mine said, Kelly, there's no way you was in the Coast Guard 4.5 years because who could do everything you've done?
That's
Well,
true.
I'll tell you one thing, I don't waste time.
I can tell. That's
It's to me, like I don't waste time. There's some people I don't waste time talking to because their communication, they're not saying anything worth listening.
Right.
Number two, I don't waste time watching trash TV.
Mhm.
If I'm watching something, listening to something, it's usually something that's going to teach me something. I'm going to listen to something like your station that adds to my career, adds to my understanding of an industry. And when people think about what they spend their time on, has it really been wisely spent?
Mm,
So
absolutely.
So you went from safety supervisor to a safety manager over a recruiting department, which
yeah,
is an interesting combination because, as we
Mhm.
know, safety and recruiting are, Justin and I know very well, are
Yeah.
often treated as separate departments and
yeah,
almost
Mhm.
adversarial at times.
yes.
How connected are these two things really? And does the industry understand that connection?
One thing I really enjoyed about CFI when I was there, and I don't know that they're there that today. When I went there, most of us we were all ex-drivers. And Glenn Brown was a trucker's trucker, man. And if you wanted to know what to do in any situation, ask yourself, what's good for the driver? And you're on the right side of the road. Now, did I have coworkers that would sit back and oh, now Kelly, that's not our job. Oh, we'll get in trouble. And I'm like, really? Well, I've never seen myself get in trouble for doing the right thing. I mean, and what's the right thing? Whatever's right for the driver.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my boss was Bruce Stockton. The one thing about Bruce, now I tell you what, he demanded excellence. He was a tough boss, but you know what else? He empowered you and he supported you. And I really appreciated that. And I was a person that I always felt like if it needs to be done, I'm just going to do it. And so that's how I ended up getting promoted pretty quickly. The other thing about CFI is safety had a seat at the table. Every morning at the president's 5-minute stand-up morning meeting, safety was there. And if a driver, no driver at CFI was ever asked to do anything illegal. And if the driver said he couldn't do it, we're not going to do it.
Discussion.
And also, if safety said, hey, this guy's out of service, we're putting this guy out of service for this reason or that reason. Operations 100% supported it. See, many companies that I go to work with and do management, leadership coaching and training with and or driver retention work with, they built silos. Department to department, they build silos. And so, I'll literally ask them, well, let's just say you got the absolute best operations department in the world. I mean, you guys know how to get the freight, you know how to book the freight, you know how to do everything on the computer, and let's just say you even got great drivers that'll deliver it. Well, let's say you have a terrible safety department. Are you going to be successful? Or a terrible maintenance department, or a finance department that doesn't get it done right. And I'm going to paraphrase, but this is kind of
No, it's just like the industry.
Yeah,
The industry
it
is
is.
fragmented. It's, and these companies are the same way.
Yeah. And so the thing that we really had was that in the successful companies that I work with, what they do is they realize that, I can be the world's best at what I do, but I do not know how you do what you do. And I need you to do your part, and I will do my part, and together we'll be successful. And part of that whole wheel that rolls is our drivers doing their part as well. We're all part of the same team. Let's quit injuring each other. And what I mean by that is I call it shin kicking. And it's funny because I'll give an example of
I
shin
love
kicking.
that. Shin kicking.
Shin
Amen.
kicking. And I mean, what does it sound like? Well, where in the world did you get this driver? This is well, you find this guy under a rock, shin kicking the recruiter.
Has he been
Well,
in
if
our
operations would
conversations,
quit
Justin?
running
I know
In our meetings?
Yeah, that's what that's what I was thinking.
My goodness.
Yeah. We're sitting here injuring each other. How in the world can we win this battle? And it is a battle, it is a challenge. How can we win in this very difficult industry if we're killing each other in our own team? Can you imagine a football team doing that? A lineman shin kicking the quarterback, or offense shin kicking defense, and then wonder why they're losing games? No, they all work together. And so that's the thing I would say, to trucking companies is you're all on the same team, act like it. And start realizing it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do. Do you know how to fix that truck? Do you know how to pay those bills and use QuickBooks and all that stuff? Do you know how to, and just fill in the blank? And the answer is no. I need you to do your part, and I need you to trust me to do my part. And that's the other part, trust. One of the biggest things that leads to accusations and attacks is we don't trust each other. There's a book out there called The Speed of Trust. I think about in the Coast Guard. There's 44 there on the 44-foot motor lifeboat. There were 3 of us. I was the engineer and crewman and deckhand, because there's only 3 of you. So you're not just doing the engineer stuff. We had a coxswain and we had another crewman. You come upon, we're in 40-foot seas and there's sinking boats or capsizing boats, and you've got to jump in the water and go save lives and bring them back. And you've got somebody on the deck with the swimmer's harness line. If you don't trust each other, that mission's failing. I'm not jumping in if I can't trust that you're going to pull when you're supposed to pull. I'm not jumping in if I can't trust that you're not going to engage the engine on the side of the boat that I've got my feet underneath, with this person. And the list goes on and on. I'm not going to jump in if I don't trust that you're not going to run off and leave me. But how about in our companies? Do I trust that Justin, the decision that I heard you just make, it doesn't make sense to me, but you know what, Justin? I'm going to trust that you probably know something about that situation that I don't know. And if I knew what you knew, I'd probably make the same decision you made. How about we start with a little bit of trust?
Yeah.
And get out of the reactionary world.
I've always dealt with owner operators. I never dealt much with the company driver side. So this kind of veers towards the owner operator side.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, in-person orientation has kind of went away to the virtual orientation, the online. For a lot of parts, just for less money for the carrier, plus these owner operator companies, they've got drivers from all over the country and they got one location, say in Ohio. Can an orientation be done correctly online?
I've got fleets that will do a portion of orientation online, and then they do that shortens up the time that has to be done in person. And I think that's pretty powerful. If you're going to do it all online, then you better utilize Zoom. Because when you start talking about online, basically all they're wanting to do, and I told you we have e-learning clients, and
Right.
we have clients that they assign orientation online. So people are sitting at home and they're watching the videos and taking the tests and all that. If you're going to do that, then that's fine. But the other piece to it is we better have a Zoom meeting between the driver and at least the fleet manager at some point. But how about some other members as well? Going back to replicating success, those that really are committed and stay forever and those that don't. One thing that you find is that drivers that stay at fleets for a long time, they know everybody and everybody knows them. Well, how do we replicate that? Instead of letting it happen an accident, let's build a plan to make it happen on purpose. And I call that strategic touch points. And because here's the other problem. Most companies don't try to start figuring out how to save somebody until they say they're going to quit.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, it's too late.
Hmm.
So I want to proactively find out if everything's all right. So if it's a company driver, maybe we have maintenance contact the guy at the end of the first week. Hey, John, this is Bill. I met you in orientation when I showed you the truck and everything. I just wanted to call. Is that truck good? Is anything going on? And if something's going on, you know what? I'm putting in the system right now. And when you come back through, we'll get it fixed. Or maybe you get it fixed right then because it's not something you want to wait on. What if before the very first paycheck is cut or settlement for an owner operator? What if somebody from accounting called that driver and said, "Hey, let me send this to you. I want to review it with you. I want to go over it to make sure you understand it."
Hallelujah. You're the first person who has ever said that, and I've said that a gazillion times. They don't even go over that in the orientation of what it looks like itemized. So bless your heart for saying that. We need to make that into a commercial and blast the crap out of it.
And you get it, so then what about safety? I literally was on the panel discussion this last week at the Line Haul Summit down in Dallas. This guy, I said, how do you turn the culture from where drivers run from safety to where drivers hang out with safety? And one of that is, you know what? Reward the behavior you want, safety directors. If you see a driver out there doing the right thing, go out there and say, "Hey, I want you to know I saw what you did, or I heard about what you did, and I just want to thank you for that. I appreciate it." While we're there and we're talking about safety for a second, and guys, please hear me. Two things I want to say. Don't lose sight for why you do what you do. We do what we do all day, every day, so we can provide for our families. And if that's your goal, then every decision you make needs to be in perfect alignment with reaching that goal. And that means we need to do our vehicle inspections. That means we need to watch our speed, watch our following distance, and keep our hours of service correct. And make sure that equipment is in the shape that it needs to be in. Because folks, you think about the person, the guy a few years ago that was in that dump truck, didn't stop at the top of the hill there in Colorado. His brakes were out of adjustment, lost his brakes going down the hill, and ended up killing all those people. And initially got 100, he's 29 years old, got 100 and some odd years prison sentence. Well, it got all political. Everybody got involved. I think it got reduced. I heard recently it got reduced to about 19 years. But this 29 year old is not going to be out of prison until he's almost 50 years old. Is that any way to provide for your family? No, his life's over by the time he gets out. So make every decision that you make out there on the road, make it so that it supports what your goal is, and that is to provide for your family and be there for your family. And guys, I got to say one more thing. One of the biggest fights that I've fought my entire career is getting people to wear their seatbelts. And recently, a friend of mine lost his 18-year-old daughter. A pickup crossed the center line and hit her head on. She went through the windshield. My buddy's asking why. Frankly, he's screaming, why? God, why did you let this happen to me? Why my daughter? Folks, I'm going to tell you something. I hope that he stops asking why. Because when you ask why long enough, you'll find out the reason why is because you taught her not to wear her seatbelt. Dads and moms, if you won't wear the seatbelt to save your own life, would you wear your seatbelt to save your kid's life? Because your kid is watching you. And if you don't wear your seatbelt, they're not going to wear theirs. And I pray that you never have to ask why.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
It's federally required as well, but that obviously doesn't make a difference. But I can tell you, my kids never put that car in gear even for a second without putting their seatbelt on.
Same here.
Yep.
Same
Amen.
here. Yep.
And that goes over into everything you do as a parent. You might not think they are listening, but kids are resilient about paying attention, especially to the bad habits that their parents have.
I want to get into one more thing before we get off here. So we got to mention our sponsor, ReadyApp. They give Justin and I our day jobs and let us spend some time on the show talking to people like you. And so we talk about this in our meetings about professionalized hiring. And I think you got into it earlier. So many times these recruiting and onboarding departments are spending time chasing paperwork, reapplication after reapplication. And that's something that at ReadyApp we're trying to fix. We put the driver first, make it so they can easily store their information, and then they can apply to jobs in seconds. But the second part of that is a professionalized hiring process. The driver is just a number to a lot of these companies. All they're doing is making sure that they fit in this box, right? The insurance requires this. You meet these qualifications. If I can get your paperwork in, you start next week. And then they're leaving 3 weeks later. They're out the door in less than 6 months in most circumstances.
And it's like I tell my own recruiting staff, at the Kelly Anderson group, and people are like, how do you guys get so many and we don't? Well, first off, how many recruiters have really had any sales training? Now, folks, when I talk about sales training and when somebody goes through my recruiter training, which is frankly per se sales training, you will never hear me talk about how to overcome objections because we're not selling cars. And frankly, we don't even play that game at Flagship. If it's a good car for you, you're going to know it, we're going to know it, and the deal is going to do its own thing. And the same is true with somebody going to work with your company. So first thing I talk to companies about is the speed of reply. Most drivers go online and they fill out a inquiry. Hey, I'm interested. Well, the problem is many recruiters never answer that. We try to contact every applicant within 5 minutes of the time that we get the lead. And then that conversation is conversational. Hey, John, I see that you apply. Tell me a little about yourself, where you've been working, what you've been doing. That's my jump off. If I'm not influenced by something he says, like, well, I wonder what your safety record, what's your safety requirements? Well, tell me what's going on with you. But otherwise, I say, tell me a little about yourself, where you've been driving, what you've been doing. And they'll all, if they're experienced, if they're an owner operator, I mean, they always, well, I've been driving for the last 15 years and I'm working over here at Bubba's right now and it's just not working out. Oh, really? Well, how long you been at Bubba's and why is it not working out? It's a conversation. And we're just getting information. I need about 3 years if I can get it pretty quickly. Then I may shift the gear. But here's the deal: as he's telling me the issues that he's having, I look at every benefit of working for this trucking company like a different piece of candy, a different flavor of candy. And when he talks about he's not making enough money, I pull out the payday, you know. And when he's talking about home time, I pull that out, and I might talk about medical benefits at some point. I'm not talking about every piece of candy in this bowl. I'm talking about the things that he's interested in, and that's why I have such a high, such a higher success rate. Because a lot of recruiters, they don't listen. They don't. All they ask is, how much experience do you have, and how, do you have any tickets or accidents? Well, if everything you're telling me is true, so they start out by calling you a liar. That's a great relationship starter.
Yeah.
And then they throw the entire bag of candy at you, and they hope something sticks. I never call somebody a liar. I'll say, man, Jon, based on after I've got some experience and I've talked with him about the things he's interested in, because what he's interested in is the pain that he's having at his current employer. So I talk about that. We talk about his safety record, and I go, man, Jon, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we couldn't move forward. Matter of fact, sounds like you'd want to start on, and we'll talk about a target orientation date. If I'm right, he says, well, that works out great. If I'm wrong, he says, well, when's your next one? So before we hang up that call, we've got a plan of action to get him an orientation on this date. When most drivers hang up with most recruiters, it's ambiguity. Yeah, hey, yeah, okay. Well, if everything you're telling me is true, then yeah, we could do something. So we need you to fill out an application. You go to our website. So you go onto their website. They don't even send you the link or anything. They don't have your contact info. They're not managing their leads within their recruiting software. That's something else I train recruiters to do, is every time you talk with an applicant, you update your notes, recategorize the lead as you need, and you diary it for follow-up. You look at most recruiters' inbox, and all they're doing is cherry picking. They'll go to this one, go to that one. And that's why, here I am with 27 years experience. I told them I want to be in orientation on this date. And I usually push that out about a month or so. And it's literally me who calls the week before orientation to follow up. And then boom, then they get my verification done and I get hired. Trucking company presidents wonder, why they have empty trucks and why do they have a high turnover? That's another reason too. We all know there's some people out there we don't need in the industry. So I'm not going to act like that we're going to hire every single one of them. But I can tell you one thing, you good guys that are out there, put together a resume for yourself. Put together a document that lists all of your accomplishments.
Yeah.
And safe driving for this many years. And if you wanted to either, also, see if I had a program of fuel mileage. I maintained, 7.5 and above for 5 years in a row. I had no tickets and no accidents, no DOT violations. And by the way, I'm 100% compliant on all my safety training, and I've earned this designation.
Show some pride in your work. There's really we talk about it at ReadyApp all the time. We're putting together a baseball card essentially for these drivers where it basically it doesn't just go off of one sentence, one broker or one carrier said about the work that you did for them. It takes all this information and basically creates a formula that ranks the driver, 0 to 100 and shows them where they stand and how they stand against their peers. But I always think it's like, it's like the military. You want to move up a rank, right? You want to move up. I think that's what you were trying to say. Like, show some pride in your work and move up the ranks and become that master driver. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great, have the certain level and really like strive to be the best that you can be. And I think then you're encouraging the carrier. Okay, now like I want to go after the best drivers. I don't want to just if you're a 60 and Justin is an 85, that carrier can make an informed decision. And then also, Kelly, you're going to want to try and strive to be that 85 driver. So you get the better paying job with the dedicated freight.
Absolutely.
Well, I think too, a big misconception as well is carriers don't respect the drivers that go that and do the extra. I always say you got driver A, driver B. Driver A is your driver that's a veteran that goes and does anything extra you ask him to. He'll go into a customer, make a good impression, keep the company name going good. Then you got driver B that does the very least amount of work he's got to do to get by, but yet they get paid the same. So there's no reason for driver A to want to do more. So a lot of times that driver falls down a little bit of because he's not getting anything extra. Why am I doing it? And I wish carriers would recognize drivers who, and you've said that earlier in the conversation, recognize and pat them on the back, give them a subway card to go get them a free 6 inch or something, because they were the smallest thing. They're going to appreciate it, that they know that they stand out a little bit, and no one gets that recognition, I don't think.
I was at the Linehaul Summit this last week, and Spartan Transportation, man, they got this cool thing. In drain orientation, they show it to you, and I've got a coin. It's not here at my desk. They have a little small coin that you can earn, and they tell you about how you can earn these different levels of recognition. And it starts with the small coin, and then after time and behavior and accomplishments, and you get the bigger coin, and then this other coin. And in the end, I mean, and it takes quite a bit to earn it. And they have a Spartan helmet. It is cool looking. And I mean, everybody wants that helmet.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
I want it just talking about it.
Oh,
Yeah,
it is cool. They may be on their website, and I've talked to, and if you guys ever want to talk to the safety director, I can put you in touch with him. He's a cool dude. And with fleets, I feel like back in 08, 09, when we had that recession, that there was a lot of cost cutting that happened, and a lot of fleets stopped doing their safety awards. And they really haven't started them since. And it amazes me the number of fleets that are on our e-learning. And I put that recognition program together. It's free. Now they have to buy their patches, but other than that, it's free. We don't charge anything extra for any of that. But the behavior, what it does for the pride of the drivers, Key Oil is a client of ours that rolled it out. And the first thing they did was have their most experienced drivers that could qualify for a master driver. They rolled it out to them first, and it became just a fight. Who was going to be first? Who was going to get it all done first and earn it? And boom! So then they had it, and now all at once the other drivers like, whoa, what's that? Where'd you get that? And now the rest got motivated to want to do it as well.
I love it. Well, before we close out, I've got kind of a three-part question. When you look at the trucking workforce over the next decade, what concerns you most? What gives you hope? Automation, electrification, AI in dispatch and routing. We saw a lot of it at the truck show. Justin and I were just at Mid-American Truck Show. A lot of these AI dispatch programs. There's a lot of technology being layered out there on top of the industry that's still struggling with its human fundamentals. Does the technology solve the workforce problem, or does it change it? And lastly, what do companies need to be doing right now in their culture, their leadership training, and their recruiting and training, if they want to be going back to that AI and automation, if they want to be viable in the next 10 years, what should they be doing today?
That's one thing I think we've heard over the years is if you're still doing what you were doing 5, 10 years ago, you're probably falling behind. 4 disciplines of execution. I would say to any manager out there, if you've never, that book was written by Stephen Covey, and it is all about taking projects from an idea to fruition. And it's called, I wish I'd have found out about that book 40 years ago. Who knows what I'd have got accomplished. I think we've all heard, AI is changing our world. And I tell you, it's increasing our productivity. I've just recently really started, using it on some of the letters that I write. And people say, Kelly, you're a wordsmith, but I told my wife last night, I said, AI is going to kill my talent in that because it does it for me now. I literally say, hey, write a letter about this. And
You
include
still
some
need
of
to
my
know how to prompt it. You get the best out of AI by knowing how to prompt the AI.
Exactly. So what should somebody be doing? They ought to be studying about AI and there's courses out there on how to learn how to properly prompt AI. But here's the thing, and I've seen it over the years where a new technology comes and we go too far. And pretty soon, we don't want, like I've seen companies, hey, how many drivers in this group? Look at my gray hair. Look at you guys without hair. You lived through this. When we went from, like, I got a dimple right there on my chin. That dimple is from sitting at lunch with the phone like this. And I'd order lunch, and I don't know if this is going to be where people can see me or not, or they're just
Oh
listening.
yeah, they'll be able to
Oh
see
yeah.
it.
Okay, and I ate my entire lunch with that phone sitting right there. And then
Yep.
finally the dispatcher would answer. Well, then all at once we got Qualcomm, and Highwaymaster and these different, and all at once fleets were like, we don't want you to call in at all. And the turnover rate went through the roof. And I think you're going to see that happen. And then that same type of thing happen with AI. They're going to try to take that automation too far. There are some people that believe, oh, you don't need to talk to a person. AI can do everything. I literally just had a person talking to me about recruiting, and they're like, won't need a recruiter anymore. AI can do everything. Really? Well, what about the people dealing with? Yeah, maybe the AI can, but be careful that you don't lose the human touch because people still get committed to people, not to companies. People will walk through fire for a person they're committed to. They will not do it for some computer.
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
When I
Yep.
used to have my trucking company, I told my dispatchers they'd manage anywhere from 8 to 12 trucks apiece. And I said, if you leave, those drivers should want to come with you no matter where you're going. It shouldn't have anything to do with me. You have the relationship. They should
Mhm.
fight through fire to go with you wherever you're going.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I think we need to be careful in the industry with technology. First off, we need to utilize the technology, but be careful when all at once you just don't think that you need to talk to people anymore because we're all doing it electronically. And I just don't think that I think that's a bridge too far.
You think we're
Um,
still going to have drivers on the road in 10 years?
I used to think, truck driver is a job that can never be outsourced or offshored. It certainly can't be offshored. They're certainly working on automation, but at the same token, there's some pretty massive DOT rules that would have to be rewritten in order to let these trucks go totally anonymous. And then, what about the last mile? Could we have some routes? And I think you already see some things in testing where they're running some corridors and testing. Something that has changed over the years from when I started. I used to run out there at first. You had to be out for 21 days before you could highlight to come home. And so you was always out 3 to 4 weeks. For me as a driver trainer, I'd run a student all the way through. So I was out 4 to 6 weeks at a time. For somebody to get a job where they were home every night and off every weekend. I mean, somebody else had to die for you to get that job. But you've got people coming right out of truck driving school getting jobs like that now and making good money. There's a company that hardly anybody ever hears about, pays about $85,000 a year. You're home every night and off every weekend. So
Yep.
yeah.
Good job.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I don't know. What do you guys think? Can I ask you that question? Where do you think about the driver in 10 years?
I think it's going to be like airplanes. I think you're still going to have a driver passenger in the truck for breakdowns, computer shutdowns, loading and unloading, and still maybe even doing that last little bit. But what I think the industry is going to change, and you just kind of even mentioned it, I think the OTR driver in those lanes are going to become more regional. What drivers are going to have to do, and I think what even dispatchers and everybody else, they're going to have to adapt to what AI does. You're going to be able to work more efficient, but you're going to have to pick up another trade within the industry to keep your job fully. But and it's like with truckers, I think you'll see more maybe more box trucks on the road, or maybe another type of truck comes out that's a little bit bigger than a box truck that can be ran in cities, and those type of deliveries. There'll be more warehouse to warehouse moves. And I think that's where electric trucks can come in even more, to where, they're not running, because you can't run but a couple hundred miles in an electric truck. So I think that's where it's going to go. And you brought it up. Drivers are now coming in wanting that type of job, or at least be home on weekends. They don't even expect to stay out 2 weeks. So when you're trying to recruit for that type of driver, it's almost impossible, because they want to be home from day one every day. So that's what I see. And John, I know, is going to say this because this is his big line about the autonomous trucks. Well, what do you do when it stops in the middle of the road? And so I feel like, and that's going to happen. I don't care what anybody tells you. There's going to be trucks that just completely just shut off. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. And you've got to have somebody in there that at least can get out and put the orange cones around it to try to keep from a major wreck.
Yeah, I say, what happens when you've got this 80,000 pound missile driving down the road and somebody hacks into it and changes speeds, or just shuts
Mm.
down right in the
Mhm.
middle of the road? I can't even imagine it. But, technology is going so fast. I actually think what's happening now is going to be completely different in 5 years. And I'll give you an example. This company, Kodiak, they're running out in the Permian Basin, and they're running loads, frac sand loads, and they're doing a great job on these unmarked roads and stuff like that. And then there's this other technology that hooks on to a current truck, and it will take over for that truck. I forget the name of the company, but it will basically turn a normal truck into an autonomous truck. Well, now I see, just like a couple of weeks ago, there's a company out there that is taking just the trailer and making it autonomous. So
Mhm.
there is no more need for a truck, for an autonomous truck. So Kodiak and this other company are going to be out of business because they're not going to have a truck. It's just going to be a trailer. I think jobs are going to change. I think when people say there aren't going to be any jobs, I think no, you're going to have, there may be some fewer jobs, but you're going to have, I think drivers will get fully out of the truck. So I think that we'll have people, managing three trucks, kind of like an air traffic control for the trucking industry. That's the way I kind of envision it. But again, I mean, I think it changes so fast that we just, we don't know where it's going to be in 5 years, or let alone 10 years.
Obviously you guys go to conferences, you listen to things, and that's what I would say to the professional drivers. It kind of goes out to part of what we started with. Spend at least 30 minutes a day studying in your field. And I don't
Mhm.
think I finished that talking point. That's something I started doing. And it says that in 1 year you become an industry expert, in 2 years a national expert, in 3 years an international expert in your field. And I literally thought, well, how does that work? Then I got to thinking about myself and the people working around me. Most people, when they get a job, whether it's as a truck driver or an office staff, they come, they apply, they get initial training in order to do the job, and after that, all they do is rinse and repeat. And the only thing that they learn of that needs to be changed is when, well, it happens with, somebody tells them to do it or they're forced to do it. They're not looking ahead. I really appreciate this conversation because you guys are obviously spending brain waves looking ahead and thinking, what does this look like? And all of us on the road have seen these trucks that they're putting all the sensors on, and they're working on it. I hadn't even thought about what you just said, Jonathan, about why do we even need the big old tractor? If it's electric, I can see that. If it's electric, is it just something that goes right underneath the front of the fifth wheel, all underneath that trailer?
It's literally like a flatbed. I gotta look up the name of the company. It's literally like a flatbed, and it's just got a front that goes right up, straight up, and that's where everything is That's where the computer sits, and you can load flatbed freight, you can load van freight, you can load container freight, you can do all of it. I think before we can fully get there, we are where we are slow is infrastructure. We do not have the infrastructure to handle this right now. And I think charging, especially if they are electric vehicles, charging takes a long time. Now, you don't have the hours of service to deal with, but charging takes a long time. And who's going to charge these vehicles? And, who's creating and I'm sure there's somebody out there doing it, creating the electric charger that where these guys come in and then they just it's a robot and it just charges the vehicle. Or they're even talking about, I think they're doing it they're testing it in Switzerland or somewhere over in Europe, where there's chargers essentially laid out in the road. So as the vehicle's driving down the
That's
road,
beneficial.
it charges while it's running down the road. So
Wow.
again, who knows? Kelly, this has been one of those conversations that has with a lot of layers to it. It's been fun, been one of our longer podcasts, but I think people are going to get a lot out of it. So hopefully if you're when you're listening to this and you've got some windshield time, you really pay attention here. I think there was some valuable information. Kelly, where can people connect with you? Where can they book you to speak? I mean, I think we're gonna definitely talk about this at ReadyApp. We're growing something special where it's all about drivers first. I'd love for you to chat with our team over there. So tell us where our listeners can learn about the Kelly Anderson Group and find you.
You bet. But just go to kellyandersongroup.com. There's our website. There's a way to connect with us there. If you can remember it, it's Kelly at thekelyandersongroup.com is my personal email. And if anybody wants to talk about some of the things we talked about, and you got questions about success, about life skills, or just anything trucking, I love visiting with people and helping people. Zig Ziglar says you can have anything in life if you help enough other people get what they want out of life. And so I'm all about giving and helping. So thank you guys for this opportunity. And I'll just tell you, next time you want to talk, just shoot me another message. And,
awesome. We will have you on again for sure. Justin, you want to take us out and thank our sponsors?
Yeah, so we want to definitely thank the sponsors that make this show go around. So this episode is brought to you by Gray Cross. That's graycross.org. Gray Cross, as y'all probably know by now, is focused on supporting trucking families and the people who keep America moving every day. When drivers and trucking families face medical emergencies, financial hardship, loss of income, or unexpected life event, Gray Cross steps in and provides real assistance and supports during that difficult time. So go check them out. Seriously, I say this all the time, but I do mean it. It's a great cause. If you can go check the website out, donate $1, $5, $10, any amount is appreciated, and it goes directly to the families who need it the most. It's graycross.org. And then this episode is also brought to you by ReadyApp. ReadyApp is helping modernize the connection between drivers, carriers, and brokers through verified driver profiles and streamlined onboarding tools designed specifically for the trucking industry. Drivers can organize their CDL information, work history, endorsements, certifications, onboarding documents, and you never know, maybe they can get the masters put in their profile as well.
Master
It's
driver.
Master driver. My grandfather was a master chief, so I appreciate the master. So ready-app.com. For carriers and brokers, ReadyApp helps reduce paperwork, improves visibility, speeds up onboarding, creates more confidence in the hiring process. Plus, driver verifies coming out. Brokers, you're going to be able to verify the driver and know who is hauling your freight. So go check us out. It's ready-app.com.
Yeah, with that new Supreme Court ruling, it's huge in broker liability. So it's something you definitely want to check out. We've got some exciting things at ReadyApp, some good partnerships coming out with some major players in the industry. So it's going to be fun, and it's gonna make life easier for drivers and everyone in the industry. It's gonna be a centralized system that brings everyone together. So that's what it's all about. So.
Excellent.
Check them out, ready-app.com. Kelly, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. We definitely want to have you on again. Thanks so much, and have a good rest of your evening.
Yes, thank you guys. Bye-bye.